Ziora felt a wave of nausea. She had been a pawn in a centuries-old game of revenge. As the day of Oma's engagement ceremony drew closer, Ziora knew she had to make a choice. She could continue using the powder, deceive the prince and become queen, or she could break the curse and reveal the truth, even if it meant losing everything. On the morning of the engagement ceremony, Ziora stood in front of her mirror, the jar of powder in her hands. Her skin still glowed with the golden hue, but her body felt weaker than ever. She could barely stand, and her heart ached with guilt. She had to make a choice. Ziora knew that if she kept using the powder, she might win the prince's love and the crown, but at what cost? Her strength was fading, and she no longer felt the same joy that had once filled her heart. She missed her true self, the Ziora who had been loved for her mind and her kindness, even if that love had been rare. She placed the jar down on the vanity, her fingers trembling. The temptation to use it one last time was strong, but she couldn't ignore the truth anymore. The kingdom of Alahiri had been built on a lie, and she couldn't allow herself to be part of it any longer. She would have to face the consequences. The palace was buzzing with excitement on the day of the engagement ceremony. Nobles from neighbouring lands had gathered, dressed in their finest attire, and the great hall was adorned with gold and crimson banners. Ziora stood in her room, her heart heavy with the decision she had made. She had chosen not to use the powder that morning. Her skin, now returning to its original dark tone, glowed under the sunlight that streamed through the window. Her mother entered the room, a frown on her face. "Ziora, what have you done?" she asked, her voice filled with disbelief. "Your skin, it's changed." Ziora looked up at her mother, tears brimming in her eyes. "I can't live a lie anymore, Mother. This isn't who I am." Her mother sighed, shaking her head. "But the prince, he's expecting to see you, the new you. You'll ruin everything." Ziora stood tall, her heart steady. "I would rather ruin the lie than destroy myself." Her mother's lips tightened, but she said no more. With a heavy heart, she left Ziora to prepare herself for the ceremony. Ziora, dressed in a simple but elegant gown, took a deep breath and made her way to the great hall. The grand hall was filled with chatter and laughter as guests eagerly awaited the arrival of Prince Obinna. Ziora stood at the entrance, her stomach churning with nervousness. The hall was lit with hundreds of lanterns, their glow casting a golden hue over the guests. Oma stood near the throne, radiant in her light-skinned beauty, her eyes gleaming with excitement. She wore a gown of shimmering gold, her head adorned with a crown of delicate flowers. As the prince entered the hall, the crowd fell silent. He walked towards Oma, his eyes full of admiration. But then, as if drawn by some invisible force, his gaze shifted to Ziora. His steps slowed, confusion flickering in his eyes as he noticed her darkened skin. "Ziora?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. The entire hall turned to look at her, and the whispers began. Ziora's heart raced, but she forced herself to step forward, her chin held high. "This is who I truly am, Your Highness," she said, her voice trembling but firm. "What you saw before was a lie, a mask created by magic. But I can't live that lie any longer.